Hello and welcome. We're going to learn how to create an AI powered web app using Streamlit and OpenAI's API. So, this is a double prizes skill because everything that you know how to do with Python and data science can now be turned into a web app. Really easy with just a couple lines of code. And it looks good. And hosting is free. Pretty cool. But what's really cool is that we're going to do this with AI. So, we're going to create an AI chatbot that is going to be a subset of ChatGPT, and we're going to create an app that does something specific. So, in short, it's going to be an AI powered web app that we're going to design, code, and then launch. First, we're going to answer the question, what is Streamlit? And in short, what it is it allows you to take Python code with no front end experience to build and create data apps. What is Streamlit Community Cloud? And so this is open source, and so is Streamlit. And Streamlit Cloud is a platform to help you develop, deploy, and discover these apps. So it's a community of other people that have a bunch of apps. So you're going to get great ideas and see what everybody else is doing. But more importantly, you'll be able to host your app for free. And we're going to jump into this awesome skill. And by the end of it, you're going to have an application. And here's a little bit of a hint. It's going to be called Hungry Bear, and it's going to use ChatGPT behind the scenes to give us suggestions on what to eat. If you ever find yourself in a position where like, oh, let's what are we going to have for dinner? What are we going to have for lunch? Well, Hungry Bear can help. All right, so here we're just at ChatGPT, and I wanted to show you something interesting because we're going to use this information from this research. So we're conducting some basic research right here to understand how ChatGPT works. For example, it can't speak French, right? But it's speaking French. So how's that possible? So what I'm doing here is just really trying to dig into how ChatGPT works because it doesn't speak French. For example, do you speak French? Okay, it's not supposed to speak French. This is actually kind of new. This is updated. Okay, this is totally bizarre because I had prepared this sort of prompt and now it's not working because it got updated. But basically, what I was trying to show you is that if you ask ChatGPT if it speaks French or another language, it says, no, I only speak English. But if you prompt it in a different language, it'll just start speaking to you in that language. So they probably caught that bug and fixed it. But why am I trying to show you that? Well, something interesting has happened. It's able to do a lot more than it tells you that it can do, right? And that's what we're going to use to design our app. And that'll make more sense when we jump into that. So let's see if we can get it to speak to us in a different language, or maybe just conclude our research and just say, well, they've patched it and no longer, doesn't know that it doesn't speak a certain language. They're kind of opening it up. Let's find out. Okay. Do you speak, I don't know, like what, Dutch? Okay, well, this is something new. So it did not speak other languages, but it doesn't matter because we're still going to be able to use this, and I'll explain why. For instance, we just a few days ago we would ask uh, ChatGPT, "Do you speak French?" and it would say, "No, I'm a language model. I only speak English," or something like that. But if you talk to it or prompt it in French, it would just talk to you in French. So what that tells us is that they're throttling or limiting the model in a certain way. For example, if you say like, how do you like something about crime, something that's illegal? How do you do something that's illegal? ChatGPT will say, I can't answer that, and it might even kick you out and block your account if it suspects it's a malicious intent. Right. So it's the takeaway here is that the model is not giving us all of the power. It just segments that power. So why don't we use that when we build our app? Just food for thought. All right, so if we're starting to think about how do we build this app, well, we can take what we've learned and just say, okay, well, we know that ChatGPT doesn't tell you everything. It sort of limits that. So why don't we create an app that limits ChatGPT even further and just sticks really close to like maybe food suggestions, right? So maybe we can create an app that gives us food suggestions. And we can do that by adding a prompt before the user prompt, right? So we can say something, ChatGPT, I want you to give me food recommendations, and be sure to ask me if I would like recommendations for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Then you use a concatenation plus, and then you say the prompt that the user entered. That way you can sort of prompt the user, what would you like to eat? And then you could say breakfast, and then it would give you all these options for breakfast. And that's a functioning app, and I've called it Hungry Bear. All right, so now we're going to actually start writing some code and building our app. And first, we're going to use Google Colab, just like we did in the last skill. So we're going to use our key from OpenAI's API key that we've already registered for. We have that key. So let's just let's connect and authenticate, import our libraries and all that good stuff. And then we'll start building our app, right? And again, in Google Colab, until we get it to a working point. And then because it's non-production, right? And then in the next video, what we'll do is turn it into production code, but we'll be using Visual Studio Code instead of an interactive notebook, because we're going to be pushing it to a web service, right? In this case, it's not Heroku or AWS. We're going to be pushing to Streamlit Cloud. All right, let's write some code. So what do we do first? Let's start off by importing or installing the package that we need, which is OpenAI. So this is going to be the first cell. I'm going to use pip Okay, so we're going to say pip install OpenAI, and we're using the exclamation mark so that we can use the shell in the background. And for Google's computer, wherever it is, in some warehouse somewhere. So once we run this, it'll take a minute. And so I'm going to keep that in a separate cell. And then meanwhile, I'm going to import OS. And I'm going to also import OpenAI. And we're also going to use Google, right? So let's go ahead and let's not import that. You have an option, you can do it. So if you did want to do this, and I'm not going to do it because I'm going to use the sidebar, but if you didn't want to use the sidebar, you would do this. So google.colab import drive. All right, so I put a comment there. So let's go ahead and import this. This is all that we're going to need. Once OpenAI is done, of course. Okay, it seems like it's still going. So I have my key that I uploaded by clicking here and then finding that file and then uploading it. And now what I can do is just click on copy the path. All right, so I've already connected to Google because I used the upload. Now I don't have to use this line of code here, right? That import statement. So I'm going to say with open, and this is what we're going to do. It opens a file and returns that file. And then this has to be in quotes, content. Well, I'm just going to paste the content in here, which I got it here by copying the path. And then we're going to specify that this is going to be a read file, R for read. And then we're going to, with open, right, grab that file as file. That's the format. And then once we do that, we can specify here API key equals file, and we're going to basically read this file and then strip it. All right, and now that we have OS, we want to store the API key in an environment variable. So we're going to access OS, and here we have to specify OpenAI API key. And we're going to basically say that it is equal to the API key. And then finally, this is the authentication. Let me just put that here. And then the last thing we're going to do is just call OpenAI and then specify that API key. And that should actually authenticate. So let's give that a try. Okay, so we're authenticated. So it's not a lot of lines of code, but what's happened is that it's taken this key, which is right here. That's the key, and we've authenticated using that environment variable that we've defined here at this bottom line. All right, so now we're ready to actually do something. So before we do anything, what are we doing? So we want to create a response, but we're designing our app still. So before we start to design anything, let's just set up a response, right? So that's the first thing. So here I'm just going to say response. And then now we're going to take this completion body. So it's OpenAI. And it's capital C. And I misspelled OpenAI. Okay, so OpenAI, and then it's capital C completion. And what are we going to do? We're going to create a completion. Okay, so now the first thing that we're going to do is define the model, right? And the way that we do that is it's basically text. And the one that we want to use is the best one. So that's going to be Text DaVinci. So if any of this is fuzzy, you might want to take the previous two skills, right? So there's basically 3 skills on ChatGPT and OpenAI and all of that. So the first one just kind of goes over everything and signs you up for an account. The second skill, we actually go through like building and working with responses and really going through the completion API endpoints one by one. So that's the video that you would want to do. That's a skill before this one. And in this one, we're actually building the web app. So I'm kind of skipping over that stuff because we've already covered it. So just wanted to give you a heads up. If that is like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Check out the previous skill. All right, so we've defined the model that we previously talked about. And everything is comma separated here, right? So what we're going to do now that we defined the model, we want to define the prompt. And the prompt, well, let's say prompt equals prompt. And what we can do, and again, comma separated there. What I'm going to do is just define prompt up here. And we're just going to make it an empty string for right now so that it's not giving us any errors. All right, so we'll add the prompt, something to that prompt at the very end once we are starting to build our app. So right now, all we have to do is just create this response. And we could add temperature. So if we're going to do that, let's just set it to 0 for now. And then we're not going to use top T because we're adjusting temperature. So we usually don't do both. But we are going to add max tokens. And we can say, for this case, we can say like 100 words. I think that would probably be safe. And we're going to skip over all of the others, but we are going to say stop. Oh, that should be a comma. So we are going to define stop, and stop is going to stop on a new line. So that's when it'll stop. All right, so we're not going to run this because we haven't defined the prompt. But even if we do, we wouldn't get anything back. So let's work on the message. So once we get that back, we'll save that as a message. And how do we do that? It's the response dot choices. And again, we went over all of this. .txt or that text text, and then we're going to print, right? So here's where we would print that message. All right, so that looks pretty good. So the only thing that's left to do is add this prompt. So before we do that, let's really think about this. What do we want to ask? So we could ask the user for a prompt here, right? So we can say input, what do you want to eat? Okay, so what do you want to eat? Specify breakfast, lunch, or dinner, what we want. And once we answer that, that's going to be the prompt, right? And so what we need to do is add something here. So what we're going to do is say the prompt equals, so we're going to concatenate. So we're going to add something in the beginning of this, right? We're going to say act like personal chef. So now we're actually creating the app and we're doing it in English. This is totally bizarre, but this is actually how we're creating the app. Act like my personal chef and give me delicious food suggestions based on the following prompt. Then I'm going to say plus prompt. Okay, so that should work. And we should get that message back too. So it's going to ask me something and then I'm going to answer it and then we're going to see if it works. Okay, so what do you want to eat? Specify breakfast, lunch, or dinner. I'll just say dinner. Then push enter. All right, so I think what happened here is maybe it just didn't give us enough. So I'm just going to define this. I'm just going to remove, I'm going to say none here and then try that again. I'll say lunch. Okay, so what do you want to eat? Lunch for a hot summer day. Okay. Is it a hot summer day? We need to refine this app a little bit more. But look at this, grilled chicken salad with mango and avocado. Nice. So you can actually get into this pre-prompt area and and work on that, right? So if you get it better and better and better, you can actually get the output to be exactly how you want your app to be. And actually, we have a working version, right? So this is a non-production version of the app. And what we've done here is just created a very rough MVP, like minimum viable product. And it's not ready for production because we're using environment variables that are attached to Google Drive and not part of like a development environment like Streamlit Cloud or Heroku or something. We want to use environment variables on the server that are not public or exposed. So in this video, we're going to actually put everything together and build an app. So it's pretty exciting. So first, let's check out the code that we've written in Colab and then see what we can do to create a GitHub repository, connect that locally into our IDE. So I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code in this instance. And then we're going to connect that with Streamlit and Streamlit Cloud. So pretty cool. So let's check out our MVP that where we left off last time. All right, so here I was kind of messing with this and we didn't really give it some great prompts. So this last time I said something healthy for breakfast and then I got a much better output, right? So let's try it again. So I'll just do the same thing. It's going to ask me a question. I'm going to say something healthy for dinner. Let's change it up, but no gluten. All right, let's see what it can do now. Okay, it's executing, it's thinking, it's doing all of its predictions. And here we get, all right, and there's no gluten in that. As yeah, look at that. So this is a lot of really healthy gluten-free dinner options. So our app is already getting a lot better. So maybe we can just, have a better description telling the user to create a better prompt. And here we can do colon space to give it a little bit better appearance. Okay, but I think we're done here. So what do we need to do in GitHub? So what we need to do is create a repo. And there are many ways we could do this. So we could do this all programmatically from the terminal, but I don't want to do it like that because not everybody has that background, right? So I'm going to just make it as simple as possible. And if you want to get deeper into the CLI with GitHub, it's not going to be that hard to do once you understand the workflow. So let's check out the general workflow first. Okay, so that workflow, I'm going to just create a repository for the app. And let's call this Hungry Bear. Okay, and it's available. Cool. So we'll keep this, let's make it private because there's no reason to share it. And then we'll add a README and that's it. So we'll create that repository. All right, so now that we have this, we can click on code and I already have SSH installed. If you don't have that, you would click on HTTPS and then you would have to enter your username and password. I'm going to use this because I have this set up, but it's not too hard to get it set up if you want to do that, But I'm just going to show you this HTTPS method in case you don't have this. And then you copy that, right? And if you're on HTTPS, you copy that and then you go over here and wherever you create your projects, that's where, where we're going to put this. And so the easiest way to do that is just either drag this into your terminal and then it'll open the terminal inside of that folder, or you can just navigate to wherever you need to be, right? Like CD documents and then find that folder. But once you're in that folder, then you can say git clone and then paste in what you did, what you grabbed from GitHub and hit enter. And once you do that and you say ls, see what's in there, now you can see that we have Hungry Bear. So let's go ahead and cd into Hungry Bear. And then I'm going to say code space period. And what this does is just opens up my Visual Studio Code from within that application. If you don't have that set up, then there's multiple things you can do. You can just click on that folder and then drag it into Visual Studio Code. Or you can just go to Visual Studio Code and then open and then find that folder. And now what we want to do is just create app.py. This is our app. And now we're going to take that app and convert it into some sort of a Streamlit app, right? So how do we do that? So where's our other app? Okay, here's our other app. And what do we start with? Well, we're going to create a dependency file that will take care of this, right? So that it's going to be a requirements.txt. We'll get to that in a little bit. So we're going to skip this cell for now. And then we're going to grab these two, Actually, we're just going to do OpenAI, and I'll explain why. We won't need OS because we're not going to use Drive, right? We're going to use the cloud. We're going to use Streamlit Cloud to host the keys, right? So we don't need to use Drive. All right, so now that we've gotten that, not a lot of information. So OpenAI, that's our first line of code. So we need to import that. But we're also going to import Streamlit as ST, which is a nice shortcut, right? So Streamlit spelled correctly. That's the first 2 lines of code. And then what we want to do is authenticate. So we're not going to do the Google method. So instead of that, how we're going to do this? So what we're going to do is say OpenAI, because we need to give it the key, right? So we're going to say API key equals, and then now we're going to say Streamlit, and we're going to grab secrets, and we're going to say it's API underscore key. And this is the way that we would do it. Instead of using Google Colab, we're going to be using Streamlit Cloud. And we'll get to this key in a minute, but we need to write the code. So when it looks for this, it's going to look inside of Streamlit Cloud for that environment variable. So we need to store that inside of the platform so that it's not public, right? So the server on Streamlit, it's actually able to authenticate with OpenAI so that we can use the service in our app. That's what's happening. And here, we just want to give it a title. Okay, so we know that this is called Hungry Bear, and we can say st.title. So when you start to work with this, you're going to see that it's super easy to work with this. Okay, so there is Hungry Bear. That's our title, and it's probably going to look like a big title. And then we want to say maybe like a header. Let's say getting you deliciously fed. And then maybe like an emoji, like let's say yum. Okay, so then there's our title, and then we have our header. And as you can see, it's a very programmatic way of creating a web application, or let's say suggestion. And I guess that's good. So suggestion saying, tell me what you feel like eating, and I'll decide. I'll help you decide. Do you want breakfast, lunch, or dinner, something like that? So I think that would be a suggestion. So let's say that that's it. And so we're going to use Streamlit again, and this is a text area, basically giving instructions to the user, right? So maybe they'll call these instructions. Okay, so now we have text area, and we just use parentheses, and then we can do something like this, and then add some quotes. And then we can say specify breakfast, lunch, or dinner. All right, so that looks like a good amount of text to sort of give us enough of an idea of what to write in the text box. And then for the logic of the application, we're just going to use an if statement. So it's real simple logic. So now we're going to check the len of instructions. And what we want to do is just make sure that it's not super long. We don't want a paragraph, right? We just want less than 1,000 characters. And then another if statement, and we want to create a button here. So it's pretty easy to create a button just like this. And then this button is going to basically say show options. So that below this text box right here, let me kind of draw what's happening. So let's say that this is the app, and this area right here is going to be like some text, like a little bit of text, and then like a text, like a box, a text area. And they're going to write what they want in there. And then when there's this button that's going to appear here, and that's what we're creating here that says show options. So it'll say, tell me what you want to eat, and I'll help you decide. Specify breakfast, lunch, or dinner. That's what it would say in this first one. And then here's where you would write what you want, and then you would push this button, show options, right? And that's kind of like what I have so far. Just kind of wanted to give you a visual representation since we're like just writing code. Okay, so this is another if statement. Inside of this, we're going to give it a response. So we're just combining Python with the OpenAI API. All right, so then we're going to call OpenAI, and we're going to create a completion. So that's completions, capital C. And we're going to create a new one. All right, so let's say model, we're going to specify the model. And here, this is something interesting because if you wanted to save some money, you wouldn't probably use the one that I'm going to use, which is DaVinci 3, because that's going to be the most expensive. I believe that's named Text DaVinci 003. And if you wanted to use 2, you would probably save a little bit of money and it wouldn't be as good, but let's go for, let's go all out and create the best app we can. So here's our prompt. So all of this should be very familiar. So here, this is where we said, what do we say? Act like my personal chef. Let's grab all of that. We'll put that here. And then here, we're going to have to say plus instructions. Okay, then a comma. I just can't see it very well. There we go. I got rid of the sidebar so you can see that this is just one line, and then it's a comma, and then we do temperature. And here we're just going to leave it at 0 for right now. And max tokens, let's do 1,000. So 1,000 words. That should be more than enough. And here we want to specify the output. So whatever that we get back is the response. And again, choices. And first element, and we're looking for text. And then here we're going to say streamlit.info, and this is going to return that output. So it's really easy. I mean, incredibly easy. And since this is an if statement, we will also want to just say else, and we're going to, I guess, a warning if they give us too big of an instruction, right? Here we can say input too big, too large. Write less than 1,000 words. And try again. Okay, so there's a warning, and that warning is saying that if it's not less than 1,000 words, throw a warning saying that input is too large, write less than 1,000 words, and try again. All right, so let's save this, and let's see where we're at. I think that's pretty much it. So now what we want to do is go over here, and I'm in Visual Studio Code, so you could either just, you have a couple options. So I'm going to show you how to use Git here, but you could easily just go over here and GitHub, if you had any trouble getting this together, you could just say add file and then upload that file. You can do it like that in case you run into trouble, right? But if you don't run into trouble, and if you want to do it programmatically, then I'm just going to say initial commit, and then you push this button, and then it asks you, would you like to stage all your changes and commit them directly? I'm going to say yes, and then I'm going to sync my changes. And then what that does is that it pushes your changes here. So I'm going to reload this, and you should see Hungry Bear. All right, cool. So we have Hungry Bear. Now the only thing that we need to do is create a requirements.txt, and there's a couple ways that we could do that. So we could actually just do it programmatically in the terminal. And the way you would do that is pip freeze. So we could do this, and then so I'm just going to write it manually. And again, why I'm doing this way is that when you're working with virtual environments like Conda and Anaconda or pip, you can save your environment files or your dependencies, but we're not using a virtual environment right now, so it's going to give us a bunch of weird stuff. So I know that we just need 2, so I'm just adding those 2. But in the future, like if you were creating an app, you might create a virtual environment first, and then only use the requirements that are in that virtual environment instead of like all of them, right? So that's just something to keep in mind, and I wanted to actually explain that so that in case it was confusing. Okay, so that's our requirements.txt file. We have our app, it's saved and ready to go. Oh, we need to push the changes, so add rex, so let's just say pip, and then we'll push those to the GitHub repository. And if we go back to that repository, we reload this, you should see the requirements text. Okay, cool. Now what we can do is go to here and then create a new app. So what is the app? From existing repo, okay, wants to get control, and we'll say okay. All right, so now here is where you would grab that repo. So it's going to be Hungry Bear, and I think it's app.py. And let's see what's in here. Okay, right, so the secrets. So what we need to do here is just define the API key. Okay, and then what you want to do is just paste it in there and then save it. And once that's inside of this application or inside of Streamlit, then that environment variable is not exposed to the public, and that's exactly what we wanted to do. So, okay, the moment of truth, let's go ahead and deploy our app. All right, so we got an error. It's okay, it's installing the requirements. So let's check that out. Okay, so I see what's happening. This is supposed to be double double equal signs, right? Not equal, because otherwise it's a uh, assignment operator. Okay, so change update requirements dot text syntax. Okay, let's upload that. Okay, that looks about right. So let's try it again. So let's go back here and click Manage App. Let's go ahead and restart it. There it is, reboot. All right, so let's close this and check it out. So Hungry Bear app, what a trip. So tell me what you want to eat and help you decide. Specify breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Okay, I want a delicious, unhealthy dinner. Let's just see what happens. Show options. Okay, so we have an error. Okay, so let's check it out. Manage app. So it has no attribute completions. All right, let's see what's happening there. Oh, it's completion, not completions with an S. Okay. All right, so let's save that. And now that we've saved that, we need to so it's what did I do? Update app.py. And it was yeah, completion syntax. Right, so let's go ahead and commit this, and then we're going to sync the changes, meaning that once we look at our GitHub, it will have been uploaded, right? So go back to Hungry Bear, and you can see that the last change was now. It'll say like, yeah, so right now. And if we look here, you should see that it says completion and not completions. Okay, cool. So let's try it one more time. Whoa, did it just start working? What's going on here? It's installing a bunch of stuff. Let's just try it, see if it works. Wow, it worked. So, oh, it worked and then it just reloaded. I guess it's had to refresh or something. I don't know. Well, actually, I know what happened here. This is kind of cool. So we saved or we pushed the changes and realized that the changes were up, that there were some new changes, and then it rebooted the thing because it's continuous integration, right? Continuous development and continuous integration. So you start to develop, make a change, and it immediately pushes to live to the server. So that's what happened. All right, so let's close this sidebar, and it should work. Okay, I want a unhealthy and delicious, let's say, lunch. Unhealthy and delicious. Oh, my stomach is growling. Okay, so I want an unhealthy. Oh, it just took a minute. Okay. Oh, what happened there? Okay, so it's running. Okay, so we could work with the formatting a little bit, but let's read what we got. Fried chicken sandwich with bacon, cheese, and ranch dressing. Pizza burger with pepperoni, sausage, and extra cheese bar. So we've covered a lot in this skill. So let's just review everything. So we started with a Google Colab interactive notebook and sort of built our MVP application, right? That we took a look at Streamlit and Streamlit Cloud and then designed this application by limiting the potential of the model, right? So we know that they're limiting it because they can tell us, the model will say, oh, I can't help you with that because it's illegal and it's potentially dangerous. So it's kind of like giving you only so much. So we're just taking that concept and just reporting it into a food app. So it's an app, it runs really fast, it's fairly inexpensive, and it uses AI. Now, you would want to really test this app and try to like ask it all these weird prompts to make sure that you're not giving people some bad instructions. So that's the other thing that you need to consider, is that you really need to like work on this app. If you're going to make this a public app, it would require a lot of work. However, it's an internal tool for you or your friends or coworkers or even in your job and it's not public, then you can use this in a lot of ways. However, if you want to release it in a public environment, you can. However, you're just going to do a lot of testing, formatting, and things like that. And we're just testing to make sure that the outputs are not going to be something that can get you in trouble, more or less. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this. I know that I really did. And I'd really love to combine web apps and Python code and AI. I mean, it just doesn't get any better with this. You can create awesome stuff. All right, so on that note, I hope this has been informative. I'd like to thank you for viewing.